Lady entrepreneurs and secular Sunday drinkers, order yourself a fresh pie from Salvatore's, put on your finest 10-carat electroplated gold chain, and, hey, I'm walking here! What are you, some kind of knucklehead?
Hey, F off! It's time to talk Tull to me!
Yeah! Loud construction zone on the JT line of prog rock, in which Not My Monkey, Not My Circus Nick, and oh, you some kind of a tough guy Omen, will shout right outside your window about how much this neighborhood has changed. And by this neighborhood, I mean every track that rock band Jethro Tull has ever produced. And by how much they've changed, I mean how much we friggin' love them. That's right. We're going to go all the way from the Martin Bar Brooklyn Botanical Gardens near Bedford Ave down to the Jonathan Noist Net Cost Market on Neptune Ave between 5th and 6th Street. We'll stop off at Doane Perry's Dyker Beach Playground and throw some bourrée bread at the Passion Play Pigeons, and then finally drive up to the Andrew Giddings Gowanus gas station on Garfield Place next to 4th Ave. And we'll end up next to the old flute factory that they turned into luxury apartments for trust fund hipsters, and have a little nosh at the Doctor to My Disease Deli. And maybe, just maybe, we'll see the Apothecary of Atlantic Ave, the Catman of Coney Island, the Curmudgeon of Canarsie. Look who finally showed up, it's Ian frickin' Anderson.
That was delightfully absurd.
That's what happens, Nick, when you give me more time to write the triptych.
I regret nothing. I'm proud and happy of it. Did you say not my monkey, not my problem?
Not my monkey, not my circus.
Not my circus? What is that?
You've never heard that expression?
Never.
Oh, really? It's like, hey, that's not my problem.
Oh, okay. So just like someone complaining to you and you're like, whatever?
Yeah, or when something's happening at work and it's outside your department.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, oh, not my monkey, not my circus.
That feels right. I'm going to use that from now on.
You should. So, Nick, this is an exciting day here at Talk Tull to Me because today we get to listen to and then talk Tull about another song from the Jethro Tull catalog.
I know, we just started doing it. It's awfully exciting.
It's good to change things up.
We are on the second of 3 Christmas tracks this season. Last week was some lovely instrumental. This week we're going to dive into the first snow on Brooklyn. Diving in head first into the snow. We'll hit a sauna first so it really shocks us.
You can never tell those piles. Is it just the snow or is it a pile of trash that's been covered up by a thin layer of snow?
Lightly dusted in white, pristine snow. Yeah. Don't trust anything in Brooklyn,
yeah.
I think is the moral of the story. Yeah.
Well, without further ado, let's put this clean song into Gets You, Maudlin, which is an incredible string section.
Yes. Strings, baby, strings. And this one we think is the actual strings.
Oh, yes.
The Sturz quartet that was mentioned last week in place of the silly but still lovely synth strings.
Yes, so that would be Gabor Skonka on first violin, Peter Skilvski on second violin, Gilia Bento on violin, and Andres Stursk on cello.
None of that was offensive.
I'm sure that all of those were exactly as they are intended to be pronounced. But what a lovely string section it is. I mean, it really takes us back to the good old days of Dee Palmer and her arrangements.
Mm-hmm.
And it adds such a fabulously emotional element to this song.
It does. Of all of the songs to have the real strings, this was a pretty darn good choice.
If you look at this album, if you take away the stuff that is kind of rehashed older material,
mm-hmm.
and maybe take away the
traditional carols.
Take away the traditional stuff. There's not much left.
No. Birthday Card at Christmas. This one.
A Winter Snowscape. I mean, that's an instrumental, but still that's new.
Yep.
This is one of the big original pieces of writing
mm-hmm.
for this album. And wow.
He put it all into this song and couldn't do any more. He just fell back onto his fainting couch and said, "We'll do covers for the rest."
It reminds me of the track off of the Ian Anderson solo album. I believe it's Rupee's Dance.
Mm-hmm.
Pigeon flying over Berlin Zoo. And there's really no thematic or musical similarity, but but it is the same era, and it does have a little bit of a similar feel. I just find it interesting that the new content on this album is this incredible emotional ballad.
Yeah. The album starts with the kind of lighthearted, silly birthday card at Christmas, which is the other like really original one. But by the time you get to near the end of the album, you get this really, really deep, kind of retrospective, sorrowful piece.
What would you say thematically if there was a song that, from the canon, that is most similar to this song thematically? What would you say it is?
You have something in mind?
I do.
Okay, it's Pibroch, without a doubt.
Exactly. Okay, exactly. So
it's just a modern-day Pibroch.
It's modern-day Pibroch at Christmas time.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, Pibroch is one of the most kind of emotional songs, I think, for both of us.
Yeah.
Historically, because it's just so, I mean, the story of fumbled love, I guess you could say. That's an American football term.
Ooh, fumbled love.
That is resonant for both of us. I think for a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely.
There's something even more kind of emotionally masochistic about this song. Because I think with Pibroch, and we'll get more into it when we talk about the lyrics, but with Pibroch, there's that sense of, oh, I was expecting one thing, and I got another.
Right.
With this, I was fully expecting disappointment, and now I'm feeling it so hard.
I'm not disappointed that I'm disappointed.
Yes, I was expecting to be hurt, and it's hurting so much more than I could ever imagine.
Yeah, and be honest, you have a nostalgia for your days living in the city. Like, is there some connection there?
I think we'll talk more about that. Yes, it's very well placed. I mean, the setting of it is very well expressed and does give me that feeling of being in Brooklyn. But I had a connection to this song before I ever lived in Brooklyn. I mean, this album came out when we were still in high school or early college.
I think it was our graduating year. I think it was like 2003 that both this and Rupee's Dance came out.
Yes, 2003. That was the year that we graduated high school. So I'd never even been to Brooklyn at that point.
Oh, fair enough.
And the song still affected me because of my maudlin, lovelorn sensibilities.
And back then, even though you didn't realize it back then, you were still yearning for modernity as opposed to like Mexico, New York. Whereas I really glommed on to something like Pibroch because I wanted to live in the woods as a medieval archer.
Both of us were trying to escape, but in different directions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Different directions along the chronological time zone.
And here we are back.
Halfway in between.
Maybe. In 2003.
That's right. Speaking of chronological time zone, how long is this song?
Ooh, if I had to guess, I would say 4.5 minutes.
Pretty darn close. It's just over 5.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And speaking of time, this is in what time signature would you say?
Oh, I didn't know I had homework.
It's my favorite new way to torture you.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't count. But it feels fairly simple. It feels like is it 4/4?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Now, whenever you say 4/4, that could mean that it's being counted in 2/2 or 8/8. But
right.
All of that you could call common time because it is a regular time signature. However you want to subdivide it, yes, it's basically 4/4.
Okay. For us plebs, 4/4 works just fine.
3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, doodle doodle 3, 4.
I followed it.
And actually, there's a wonderful example in this song of the subdivision of music.
Okay. What do you mean?
Well, if you listen to the tambourine.
Oh, sure, yeah.
There's some verse in which, and I think this happens a couple of times, where the tambourine is playing on the 3.
Okay.
So Ian is singing, flew in on the evening plane, and the tambourine is going, 1, 2, down, always on the 3 of that 4-beat measure.
I flew in on the evening plane.
And then it switches to doing 16th notes. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a ta 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 ta.
A yellow cab from JFK, the long way round.
And it's a great example of how with just one instrument changing the tempo and the subdivision of the measure, it suddenly gives you this bigger sense of energy. It feels like time is moving differently. Even though it's the exact same tempo, you get that sense of excitement and speeding up just because there's a different subdivision with that beat.
Yeah. And the tambourine is kind of tertiary enough that it's not, that it's a more subtle kind of subconscious thing.
Yeah, you could not notice it necessarily, but your body will notice it.
Yeah. Oh, it tingled right about there.
It
Definitely.
does though. I mean, we're joking, but we're not.
Slightly.
We're
That's
never
just a slight joke.
Never not joking.
We're not far from a joke. Look around you. Within 5 feet is a joke.
Stop the car. I think we ran over a joke.
It's just a clown.
Quick, put it out of its misery. Other things musically, the bass of this song is, I would say, kind of a mixture of the flute and Ian's acoustic guitar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the acoustic is very, very nice. Yep.
Change the position. If you change the angle at which you are blowing air across the mouthpiece, you can affect the tonality of the note, which gives you a bigger power to be out of tune if you're not very good.
Right, yeah.
But if you have an incredibly well-controlled embouchure and know your instrument really well, you can bend the note. And if you have been playing it for as long as Ian has in 2003, you can bend the note to a different note. I mean, he does all these things where he plays a note and goes, and that's all one fingering, which is crazy.
Yeah. Is it physically turning the flute?
Yes. If you have the flute like this, you would rotate it.
Roll it, yeah.
Roll it away from you or toward you 15, 20 degrees.
I think I've seen him do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's cool.
And in this case, it gives that sense, just like we heard with Martin on the guitar, it gives that sense of, it's like a train that you hear across the countryside. We talked about, on a previous episode, about the high and lonely sound featured in some mournful bluegrass music.
Yeah.
It gives you that sense of just like, oh, the distance is killing my heart.
And there's really, it's kind of strange. There's something so much more potent about the slide of the note change as opposed to like hearing that actual step of note.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know, it's just, there's something so much more powerful and sorrowful, I guess. And maybe if we weren't listening to such a sad song, if it were a peppy song, it would sound cool and exciting. But in this, they're certainly using it to its strongest advantage.
We've talked about how good the band is at matching the sounds to the concepts that they're talking about.
Yes, absolutely.
And this is a great instance in which I think that one of the themes of the song, obviously we'll talk more about it soon, is memory. And the way that memory, especially over a long period of time, distorts, and some parts of it end up being very, very strongly in focus. Some parts are completely overlooked or deleted, and some parts morph. And when you look back on a time that was previous, when you were remembering something, time sort of bends and warps in that way.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think that's one of the attributes of nostalgia, is that sense of like, you're not actually remembering a thing, you're remembering your memory of remembering a thing after you forgot about how it actually was.
And it's also fluid, too.
Very fluid.
It will gradually evolve and change and flow into something else.
Many of my memories are covered in fluids.
Your memories are just of fluids. So the tea that you had this morning, when you took a bath when you were 5. Yeah.
Do you remember this? Do you remember that wedding? Which fluid was that?
Which fluid? Oh, I had champagne there?
That was my 180th glass of champagne. Ah, yes.
That was great champagne.
It's a Dewey Decimal System, but it's very dewy. Dripping decimal system.
Get a tarp.
Ian's voice in this song is, speaking of needing a tarp, oozing with of, rather than it being a externally focused flute, that it was that the focus of his playing seemed to be more internal.
Yeah.
Which, rather than blasting us out the back of our heads, makes us want to take a step forward into the world of his voice and his story that he's weaving.
Yeah. He leaves the door open and the light on, and it's inviting, but it could be a little scary to go in there, but we're drawn to that.
It's the house that you're not sure is going to pass out candy at Halloween,
But you try anyway.
but you feel like if they are going to, it's going to be full-sized candy bars.
That's it. You've heard half of the rumors are full-size candy bars. The other half is
Murder.
they kidnap children. Yeah.
Raisins, worse.
Oh, even worse. I really like raisins.
Yes. Yes.
Time I confess.
You and the most sensual Puritans of the 1800s.
Sensual. Have a raisin, my lady.
Oh, in public? Don't pass me a raisin. They should gossip.
So you often bring up the synesthetic side of the songs for Tull. What, if any, imagery do you get when you hear this song, when you see this song?
You mean just going off of the music, kind of trying not to pay attention to the lyrics?
You can, I mean, if it's just like the narration of the song, that's great. But like, is there anything else that inspires you on this song that fills your vision?
I would say that there is definitely a cinematic element to it, and
Yeah.
and having lived in Brooklyn and you know, having an emotional connection to New York City, I do have a very kind of specific set of images that I associate with this song. But just from the musical standpoint, there is one of the beautiful things about this song is there's this incredible pull between the hopeful sounds, the rising sounds,
yeah.
and then the terribly mournful minor chords and drawn out tones.
Yeah.
So there's this pull between the dark and the light feelings of this song. Even if you look at that intro, that's all rather hopeful. And then it immediately shifts to dum.
Yeah.
Excitement and the hope of being in such a big city with so much going on,
Right, right.
and the soul-crushing emptiness of the anonymity and coldness and uncaringness of living in such a big city.
Also, right, yeah.
And when you drive across the city, as the song describes, you get both of those things in stark contrast. And also, you know, often the weather itself kind of plays into that. It's topographical enough. It's hydroponic enough. No, what am I looking for? It's uppy-downy enough that you often get views of other parts of the city. And so you can be in a cloudy area, but be looking out at a sunny area.
Oh, yeah.
And see the sun reflecting off the buildings and the landmarks over there. But here it's gloomy, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So the perspective that it allows you, partly because it's on the coast, is really fascinating.
I feel like, again, like I said earlier, I'm usually the sappier one, but I think there is that extra connection for you in this. I mean, I like it, but it's not, doesn't move me to tears.
This song is almost custom made to hit me in the feels.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it might just be the Brooklyn aspect, that it's so specifically placed that it's just too foreign for me to connect.
Before we move on to the actual content,
Yep.
I want to give a quick shout out to Jonathan Noyce, because the job that he's doing in this song is so serviceable. It's so satisfactory.
Oh, it's fiercely average.
It does what it needs to do, and I'm trying to remember. I feel like it may have been him that we saw an interview with, and he described himself as a stealth bassist.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yep.
He was like, "I want to be the bassist where you don't ever hear him playing, but you just feel it."
Life goals.
Yeah.
That's great.
And it works, you know. And there's at the very end we have a quick little riff of his right at the fade out that's just delightful about this song.
No. I'm very excited to get into the content. So let's
do that.
So we said this is a modern day Pibroch. Full disclosure, you and I did not talk about that before we sat down to do this episode. We came to that of our own volition.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's inevitable to reach that conclusion if you have an encyclopedic familiarity with the songs of Jethro Tull.
Yes, that helps. Yeah.
Now, Nick, before we jump into the content, what is Brooklyn? I know, but some people may not be aware.
It is a borough. Borough?
Yeah, you did it. Well done.
Borough of
It is one of the 5 boroughs.
One of the 5 boroughs on... It's not... No, in New York City. It wouldn't be on the island of Manhattan because...
Correct. The island of Manhattan is Manhattan. The other boroughs are the Bronx, which is part of mainland New York State on the east side of the Hudson River. Then there's Staten Island, which we mostly don't talk about, is only really significant because of what we do in the shadows, and the Wu-Tang Clan. But that is a proper island which exists between the lower bay of New York and the Arthur Kill River. And then Brooklyn and Queens are located on Long Island, Brooklyn being the southwesternmost part that runs pretty much alongside Manhattan and sticks out a bit into the bay, going down to Rockaway Park and Coney Island, and then Queens being the sort of upper bit that is closer to the Bronx. And then if you go out past Queens, then you are on Long Island in Nassau County.
So a fun little language tidbit. You said the Arthur Kill River.
Mm-hmm.
So kill is a Dutch word meaning like a stream or inlet, an arm of the sea. So if you're coming up from Westchester County area, you're going to run into Wallkill, Troutkill, all of those. But they also have river, so they're also a little kind of redundant. The Wallkill River is the Wall River River.
Or the Catskill Mountains kill in there.
Oh, cool. I didn't even think about that one.
Even the word Brooklyn itself is a derivation from a Dutch word which refers to a Dutch city called Brooklyn or something.
Well done. Okay.
Which goes back to the 1000s. So a lot of the history of Brooklyn is tied up in the old Dutch settlements. Of course, it was later taken over by the English.
Right. The Dutch migrated down to Pennsylvania.
And then there have been waves of other immigrants through Brooklyn, which has really made it what it is. You know, you had the Greeks, the Italians, the Poles, the
Irish.
The Irish, of course, there's a significant African American population there. And it's really a beautiful melting pot. And anyone who's ever lived there will tell you how much it's changed. But that has been the case ever since the Dutch came and
kicked off the native population.
Yes, ever since the Dutch came and stole the land from the Lenape. I'm sure the Lenape were sitting around being like, man, this neighborhood has really changed.
Talk about gentrification.
God. I gotta go all the way up to Red Hook to find a deer. Okay.
So that is Brooklyn.
So that's Brooklyn.
So yeah, it's smack in the middle of New York City.
So it's fun the way that Ian describes it. Flew in on the evening plane. Is it such a good idea that I'm here again? I could cut my cold breath with a knife and taste the winter of another...
There to produce the snow.
Right, and so, using the kind of logic of the heart, it hasn't snowed here in 30 years.
Right, yeah, the logical progression, the allegorical progression.
Yeah. JFK is way, 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 way down in the south part of Brooklyn, so... taking a cab from JFK, I mean, either way, taking the cab or taking the subway, it's going to be a long time to get into any kind of central Brooklyn.
JFK is JFK Airport, for clarification.
JFK Airport, yes, thank you.
Yeah, John F. Kennedy Airport.
Right. The long way round would probably be taking the Van Wyck Expressway, another Dutch name.
Yeah.
Which runs all the way up almost basically into Queens, and then you can go down again.
So what's the quick way to go?
There isn't one. Well, you could. I mean, yeah, it's all going to be it's all going to be the long way. Traffic's terrible.
Yeah, by default, it is the long way round.
I mean, I guess the long way round could also be the Belt Parkway, which would take you down all the way around the southern part of Brooklyn, and then it heads up to Manhattan.
Okay.
Or the short way, I guess, could refer to the subway.
Oh, sure, fair enough. Yeah.
Basically, any highway, you have to circle around the main part of Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm. So he, at some point, between the choking down the tears, he gets out of the cab because his cold feet are drumming. He's walking somewhere. So it's not the cab dropped him off at his destination.
No, but in the neighborhood.
Yeah, his feet are drumming. He wants the experience to walk up to this point. Maybe it's a walk that he did every day back when he was in Brooklyn.
Yeah, sure.
You know? And he becomes a little bit of a creeper. You don't see me in the shadows from your cozy window, which is a white plastic bag flying across the breeze.
Yes, or depending on where you are in Brooklyn, it could be tumbleweave. Have you ever seen... No, I know that sounds like a joke, but it is the literal truth that you often will see the wigs of women or parts of them that get tangled up in things and blowing down the street. We used to call it tumbleweave.
Hilarious. But that line, and last night, who was in your parlor, that was the biggest red flag for Pibroch to me.
Absolutely.
There are strange boots in the hall, strange slippers by the fire.
Uh-huh. A candlelit dinner for two has been laid.
Candlelit table for two has been laid. Strange flavors by the fire. Strange boots in the hallway. Put my cap on my head. I turn and walk away.
Yeah. We're seeing this across time. It's a mirroring of things that have happened for millennia.
Yeah. It almost reminds me of that Sting song.
Everything always reminds you of a Sting song.
Well, I met a Sting kick recently. It reminds me of that song. I think it's called 1,000 Years, where he basically describes himself being reincarnated across generations and generations and generations.
1,000 years, 1,000 more, 1,000 times, a million doors to eternity.
That is the stingiest song I could ever think of.
Seeking the love of the same woman who always rejects him.
Kind of Highlander-y.
It's sad boy Highlander-y.
Yeah, it's emo Highlander.
Yes.
But yeah, that sounds very Sting to me. Yeah.
Now, in my cinematic version of this song, I'm picturing one of the old Brooklyn brownstones
Absolutely, yes.
that exist in the Park Slope neighborhood. When my wife and I lived in the corner of Bed-Stuy, it had a lot of those old brownstones that were not as well kept up. The neighborhood was less expensive, but these houses were just gorgeous. Not as expensive, meaning they would still sell for multiple millions of dollars.
Right.
But they have these huge staircases which go up almost an entire level off of the street. And then you can sort of see into the parlor windows from there. And often in the Yuletide season, you can see people's decorations and they put lights out. And it's very, very beautiful. But being on the outside of that feels even colder than it would if you were in a forest.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're walking alone in the forest. It's just you alone. Whereas as you're walking to this brownstone, you're able to see in every window and see people having dinner, or, well, I mean, if it's 3 a.m, probably not, but still, you see signs of happiness and people coexisting and cohabiting with one another.
Yeah. Now, the snow in this song, Nick, kind of takes on a character of its own, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
The role of it specifically in this song is to obscure further the presence of the singer.
He leaves with no trace.
Exactly.
No evidence of his being there.
The first snow on Brooklyn paints a Christmas card upon the pavement. The cab leaves a disappearing trace, and then it's gone. And the snow covers my footsteps, deep regrets and heavy heartbeats. When you wait, that. And I think in this specific story, it's clearly there's some kind of a romantic relationship. And the implication is that only one of those people involved has any memory of it, and the other person is standing out in the cold, looking in at this life that he imagines might have been his. Whew.
When someone values a memory or a thing and holds it at such high regard, and then the other person with whom you share that memory, it just throws it away.
Yeah.
It's very devastating, yeah.
Like a Christmas card in the trash on
January 1st?
January 1st.
Not even recycled. It goes right in the trash.
Most of the recycling goes in the trash anyway in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Now, the funny thing about the weather is that New York City can typically be quite mild.
At times, yeah.
In the winter. However, it can also be really nasty and really, really cold. I remember one year that I was living there, it dropped to 10 degrees Fahrenheit and stayed there for 3 weeks straight.
Yeah.
And when you're in the city and you're surrounded by pavement, it's not just the cold in the air. It's like the buildings, the structures are sucking any heat that exists right out of you.
Right, yeah. The advantage of being on the island is the water stays warm for a while and the land stays warm for a while, and it creates kind of this atmosphere that keeps everything in.
Microclimate.
But once everything starts to turn over to the cold, if it's that cold,
Yeah.
it's the exact same process. Everything stays cold.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about something that I find really amusing about this song.
Okay.
The thin wind stings my face to pull collar up. I could murder coffee in a grande cup. No welcome deli. There's no Starbucks here. It's like, what? How could... What do you mean? But then I realized, yeah, if you're traveling internationally for your job, something that's going to be consistently exactly the same almost everywhere in the world would be a huge comfort for you.
Sure. Yeah. And the fact that it has such a broad footprint, it is reliable on many levels.
Exactly. Now, I would be interested to look up a map of where there were Starbucks in Brooklyn in 2003, because there are not that few of them.
Maybe it's really... Oh, well, it says there's no Starbucks here. I was thinking maybe just the fact of it being at a time when he couldn't, like when the store was closed. But it sounds like it's not present there.
Which begs the question, what neighborhood could he possibly have been in?
Yeah, we need to do some sleuthing.
He could have been in Borough Park. On Utrecht Avenue, there's a dearth of Starbucks there. He could have been in Kensington.
It's a Starbucks desert.
Yeah. He might have been in my old neighborhood in Windsor Terrace. If he was in Gowanus or Park Slope, there are a number of Starbucks very close by that he could have gone to.
He was just so devastated. He wasn't even thinking.
He wasn't thinking. He couldn't think clearly.
Yeah, exactly. All I need to do is walk a block and there will be a Starbucks.
Throw a rock, walk a block, talk the talk, pull up my socks.
Do not throw rocks at Starbucks, please. Just don't buy their coffee. Just don't patronize them. That's all.
I'm not saying you shouldn't throw rocks at Starbucks.
Oh, fair enough. You taking the extra mile.
Now, in my old age, I admit to enjoying Starbucks, and for the same reasons that Ian does, it's consistent.
Yeah. Anything else, Omen?
About First Snow on Brooklyn.
Were you asking me if that was
I was finishing
what
your
I was asking?
sentence. Anything else about First Snow on Brooklyn? Just that we want to go to the last verse and review the thesis of the song. Some things are best forgotten, some are better half remembered.
Yeah.
I just thought that I might be there on your Christmas night.
That is a delight.
Until next week, I am the deep regrets that you can get at the corner bodega, Omen Thomas Sade.
I am eating a snack of Blizzard Bites, Nick McGill.
We could murder a coffee in a grande cup, the Feckless Momes.
And this is the last snow on Brooklyn. Gray and slushy and reminiscent of something better. Talk Tull.
I suppose it all started with the snow. You see, it was a very special kind of snow. A snow to make the happy happier and the giddy even giddier. A snow to make a homecoming homier and natural enemies friends. Natural. For it was the first snow of the season. And as any child can tell you, there's a certain magic to the very first snow. Especially when it falls on the day before Christmas. For when the first snow is also a Christmas snow, well, something wonderful is bound to happen.